And we are live. Welcome to this latest episode of Totally Unscripted. My name is Martin Hoxie, and as always, I'm joined by Charles Maxon. Hello, Charles.
Hey, Martin. Hey, Steve. Hey, everybody. Special shout out to Brian from Canada, who's joined in and already chatted. But it's good to be back. How's everybody's summer breaks going?
Good.
It's hot here. I may faint at some point. Just unbelievably, I'm in Scotland. We don't do heat well. But anyway, so we've been a predominantly Google Apps Script show, but obviously there is a wider world out there, and kind of joining some of the dots together. So if you're into Google Apps Script, you're probably into automation of some kind. You're also more than likely probably into Google Workspace as well. So we're meshing these two together. We're talking about administration within Workspace and looking at automation opportunities as well, and just kind of streamlining things. So Charles, I think you were keen to get this show on the air. Any particular things that you thought we were hitting?
So first of all, I think just the fact that there's so much that can be automated from an admin standpoint, and I think a lot of new admins don't know where to start, and a lot of developers get called in and try to figure out how do I help, right? Or like you mentioned, a lot of folks are both roles, right? They are the admin and the developer, so they wear multiple hats. And our guest Jay Lee has actually solved a lot of those problems and made that available with a phenomenal tool. And so I was really excited when Jay said he had some time to join us. And so with that, why don't we
bring Jay on? Welcome to the show, Jay.
Hi, guys.
So
Great
Jay Lee, we were just talking before the show. Jay and I met actually in 2012, incredibly briefly, but it was I/O.
Google I/O,
where they gave you everything. So memorable for a number of reasons. But Jay, so do you want to just you back then you were working for one of Google's suppliers, but now you're with Google. So do you want to just say a quick couple of things about what you do at Google?
Yeah, so my role at Google is on the professional services team, and I am a strategic cloud engineer helping customers, number one, move on to Workspace. So deployment and migration is obviously a big part there, but then also just implement best practice in terms of their Workspace setup, things like security, taking their needs and really making sure the product team is aware of those needs also.
So I think when we met at I/O, Steve was there and he basically said, "Have you met Jay? He has made GAM." And that was that. But it is a product that is known worldwide. It is a product that has, I think, tens of thousands of users out there. Do you want to just explain a bit more about what GAM actually is and what it does?
Yeah, so GAM is a command line open source tool that allows you to manage Google Workspace, basically. So if you think of the admin.google.com admin console with Workspace, a lot of the activities you do in there, creating users, managing users, groups, calendars, all those actions you would take as an admin, well, not all of them, but a lot of them, GAM is capable of doing and making a command line that you can run on Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. The advantage to that then is, as an admin, that allows me to automate tasks, right? So if I have 10 things I need to do, and maybe I need to do each one of those things for 5,000 of my users, that's a lot of mouse clicks, right? I say a lot of times, GAM exists to save your mouse clicks, right? If you can take that and script it and automate the process and even run it on a scheduled basis, then that's going to greatly reduce the workload of a IT admin.
That's awesome. And Jay, I understand that you necessarily weren't a developer when you got into this and you approached GAM, but yet you saw the need for the tool, which I'd love to hear more of the background about that. But you figured out how to build this tool and kind of make it famous. What's the kind of the history? Like, how did you get from great idea to great implementation?
Yeah, so I started my career at the university I graduated from, Cairn University, just doing general system administration, right? And it was a small university, maybe thousands full-time students, and there were 5 of us on the IT team, and it was really great workplace because we did a little bit of everything, right? I might be fixing a copier, obviously a lot of desktops, imaging, installing software, but things like managing mail servers and that kind of thing. So ultimately, they ended up on Google Apps and Google Workspace. Sorry, Google Apps at the time, you know, in terms of administering that and managing that, that's where I saw a need there. And yeah, like you said, I definitely started with an IT background, and still do a lot with IT. But I think there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of in-between space there, right? In the IT field of the need for scripting, the need for automation of services that you can reduce that, you know, manual workload there. So when we moved over, I recognized, okay, we need to be able to work with these. And I think a lot of IT admins are a good IT admin in my mind is very good at scripting, right? Like high level scripting, something like AppScript, something like shell scripting, that kind of thing, and gluing those together, but not necessarily the whole development cycle, calling APIs, that kind of thing. So GAM was really filling that need between you know, just a general shell script and something that I can actually talk REST APIs and OAuth and back off and retry, those kind of things. So
That's pretty awesome. So you mentioned it does a lot of things, and you mentioned, you know, to us prior that it does a lot of things and people do them differently. But what are the most classic uses? What are your most popular features that people actually use? What do they automate the most, so to speak?
yeah, I would say some of the most popular ones are definitely, you know, managing users, right? User onboarding, user offboarding. Every company has that. And the interesting thing I found is every company wants different things with that, right? You know, like we all think, oh, we need to create the user, but how do you communicate the password to the user? How do you, you know, automate their adding them to groups? So the onboarding process and the offboarding process, both. And again, every customer is a little different. I've talked to some customers, and the most important thing is, okay, we preserve the Google Drive docs, you know, where do those go when someone leaves? But even things like the calendar, how do we clean up the calendar and make sure that those team meetings that user might own are transferred appropriately, those kind of things. So GAM takes those tasks and API calls and basically makes it a command line that you would run. And then that allows an admin to say, okay, here's my deprovision user script. And as soon as we know this person is leaving, or when they get ready to leave, we're going to run these 10 things right here in a row there. And it's just a bunch of GAM commands and a batch script kind of piece there. So
the neat things you say, everyone does it differently, but they can use the command lines and put it in the right order and script it kind of their way.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Do you have any like templates that you share or use for, you know, here's the classic onboarding or offboarding that folks can actually take and kind of make their way?
Not really. There's a lot of discussion about this in the mailing list, but like I said, it's just so every customer is a little different there, and how they want to think about, you know, I mean, I've seen things where obviously, you know, minute the person steps away from the desk, you want to lock down the account, to we actually give them a couple of weeks time. You know, I don't know how advisable that is legally, but you know, I've talked to customers that, yeah, we give them some time to transfer their personal stuff out, that kind of thing. So
Could you do a deep dive on APIs? Because I'm curious about what type of APIs and how more offerings were added over the period of time. And also, what is the user experience of, like, you know, having those secret keys and things like that?
yeah, absolutely. So probably the biggest one GAM uses is the admin SDK and the directory API. That's the API to create users, update users' passwords. Same thing with groups, you know, all the management of groups, resource calendars, even things like buildings and conference rooms, are all controlled via the directory API. And then there's other APIs like the group settings API. You can go in and manage, the actual, if you've ever created a Google group, there's a ton of settings that you can control within the group. So setting those up also. But GAM also reaches into some of the services also for Workspace. So for example, one area that's very popular is Gmail API. And I tell this story that I got my first job at the university because one of the guys in the IT department sent an email out that he should not have to the entire company. And this was back in the right around 2000, and they literally just shut off the email server, booted it up on their own LAN, and then went into each mailbox and deleted it. But those kind of like, oh, we got to get this email out of everybody's mailbox quickly. GAM can actually do that and modify messages in users' mailboxes. So same thing with Drive. It can create and manage Drive files for users. So it does reach into some of the more Workspace services APIs also, and that's a very popular area also, especially Drive. I think just document store management. A lot of companies want to automate that, want to do things like run checks on who's sharing what, where, these kind of activities.
So interesting point. It's impressive that you hook into some of the other services. So I could come up with a lot of interesting use cases as a non-admin. I understand to install GAM, you need to be an admin. That makes obvious sense. But what are some of the non-admin use cases? Or do you even have to be an admin to actually get some reward out of using GAM?
Yeah, so technically, no, you don't have to be. You can set up GAM without it. There's pieces like the to manage services, right? To go into any user's Gmail mailbox or Drive, that kind of thing. That requires domain-wide delegation, requires an admin to actually set that piece, and it's very powerful. But it's something you'd want, only one or two people in the company be able to do. But there is functionality like group management is a popular one, right? Maybe I'm just a department head, but I want to automate management of one of my Google groups and sync that over. Our APIs allow, as long as you have rights, you're an owner of the group or a manager of that group, our APIs now allow that. So you can do that as a non-Workspace admin and just, managing the group piece there.
Definitely. So question I have for you, when we were looking at bringing you on and looking at the community around GAM and the number of folks using it, it seems to be super widespread. Do you have any idea how many folks actually use it and kind of what's the footprint that it has? I saw just by the number of contributors alone that you have, because it's open source, there's a ton of people actually, helping out with it. How big is this tool?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a tough one with open source to get that measurement. Right. Really, the only statistic I have is the download count on GitHub. Usually, if a version, it depends on how often I release, right? But if a version's been up for a month or two, then it's usually in the 5 to 10,000 range of downloads of that tool. Customers using it. I don't have exact statistics because GAM doesn't, record what commands are running or that kind of thing. But it is very popular, and most customers that I talk to are using it in one fashion or another. It's interesting that they all use it for something a little bit different, but most customers are using it in some sense.
So let me ask you this question then, since you have a day job and you and your team handle some of the largest, frankly, most challenging deployments that are being done for Workspace. How do you use GAM? Like, how do you and your team use it? How do you recommend it? What are some of the things that you find yourself always going back to the tool for?
Yeah, generally in a customer deployment, right? It's often things like, Google has really great tools like GCDS for automating provisioning of workspace based on AD, these kind of pieces. But there's a lot of deployment is migration, and that means cleanup, right? Like right. It's just the case that you start digging into some ugly corners of the company when you're starting to pull from Active Directory and Exchange, and it's going to take some massaging the data there. So that's where GAM often is very useful in being able to manage that data, pull the current list of users, move users between org units as necessary. And then, there's always pieces here. I was saying earlier, I just helped a customer in the spring, very large customer, and they chose to use the new Chrome browser cloud management that we offer now. Traditionally, you could only manage Chrome via GPO and Active Directory, that piece, but you can now fully manage Chrome browsers in the cloud and in your workspace instance, and there's APIs for that. So this customer was deploying that. They wanted to move off of a lot of the AD dependency for that and use our console for that. But that meant there would be hundreds of thousands of browser objects in the workspace tree that you can see and manage in the admin console, but that ends up being a lot of mouse clicks, right? So with I implemented the API basically with GAM, released that functionality, and that allows the customer to do things like, okay, we need to move these 10,000 browsers from this org unit over to this other one. They can just script that together based on however they want to query that list.
Yeah, so we got a quick question, which I think I would definitely want to address right now, and it's from Jacob.
Yeah.
Jacob, thank you for the question. Jacob mentions, he goes, GAM's a third-party tool, right? And the answer is yes. GAM is an open source community project, which, first of all, on behalf of the community and admins everywhere, thank you, Jay, for doing that, for releasing it this way, making it open source and making it available. Why did you go that route, making it an open source tool? I mean, not to be funny, but I imagine you could have made some money off of this tool, but yeah, you gave it away.
Yeah, it's a popular question. A lot of people ask me, and exactly that. I don't know how much money was there in it. Well, I try not to think about too much. I will say that GAM has offered me many opportunities, right? The reseller Steve and I were at knew about me because of GAM. Ultimately got hired at Google and enjoying the job I'm doing today because of GAM. So it made me famous, if not rich. At least I got that part in my own very little small world. So
it's a new spin on the freemium model, right? You just did it more of a career thing.
yeah, just to promote my name.
Yeah, that's good.
No, I mean, I think in the decision-making process, it was, number one, I used a lot of open source software early in my career, got into Linux. I was using Linux back in '95 on a 386 laptop, like piece of junk laptop. But that model of just releasing it, I clearly remember, playing with Linux and getting to dig into it and upgrade to the new version, all excitement of that. And then I knew things like Windows NT existed and Microsoft servers and that kind of thing. But as a college kid, I had no access to that, right? Like, how do you even get started in that area until you're at a company that can pay for those products? And then that's your full-time job, right? You're not really experimenting with it. So I enjoyed open source because I think I always saw the community that immediately built up around, hey, we got a tool that does a job, and let's make it do what we need to and collaborate on that. So
the other thing I noticed, sorry, Martin, the other thing I noticed is you spend a lot of time still kind of maintaining this, right? Either responding to requests or getting involved in the community. And the other thing I think you've done brilliantly is you've really spelled out how the tool works, right? There's a ton of resources you've made available. If you go up on GitHub and you look at it, you have tons of things out there. What are some of the resources you would point someone to learn more or to get involved? Like, what are some of the highlights? And Martin, if you could share some of those on the screen that we do know.
Yeah, so the biggest one I would say is the GAM group and community. Basically, it's a mailing list or a Google group, and that's available to anyone to join and post and ask questions. If you're trying to do something with GAM, feel free to jump on there. I post when I can, but there's a number of other people on there that are very quick in responding. One of the things I've always loved about these communities and open source is I really think often it may not be an official answer, but sometimes you get a quicker answer from a community like this than you do from an official support channel, that kind of thing. It's funny, when I started at Google, I was on Google Enterprise support team and that kind of thing. And so I've done that. And obviously, every company, you want official support, right? The old line is you want someone you can actually yell at, right? Like, don't join the mailing list to yell at me. But yeah, so the community I think is an important one to be. It's just grown up into a great place for Google Workspace admins to join and ask questions, collaborate, that kind of thing on there. And sometimes not only about GAM, but just Workspace in general or Google in general there. So that's one. The other one I would say is the GAM Wiki. And that's, I've done my best to document GAM functionality and what you can do there, the commands there. I will say documentation is hard. So like you said, okay, if it's a question between coding it and documenting it, it's usually like I finish the coding, like, oh, darn, I got to document this now. That's tough. It's tough because it just becomes out of date so quickly, right? But the wiki is pretty thorough documentation on the GAM commands, different areas, that kind of thing there that are possible with GAM. So if you're just asking the question, what can GAM do? How the wiki is a great place to explore. Of here's the options. Often I hear from people, I had no idea GAM could do that. I knew I could create users, but I didn't know I could reach in and delete emails or manage conflict accounts or send chats, that kind of thing. So take a look at the wiki and browse through it. Even if it's not something, okay, that solves an immediate problem, knowing it's there is helpful down the road.
No, absolutely. You mentioned chat a second ago. I just saw that you've actually added a chat room or chat support for folks now moving into chat.
Yeah, this is the Google Chat API that allows you to create bots. And you can do some really powerful things with that if you automate these. So one that I thought, again, with a command line tool is, okay, I have my server environment, but sometimes you want to bring that information into your group, right? So where I really picture the chat, because it basically means you can run a GAM command on a Linux server or on a Windows server, and it pushes out to a Google chat room. The cool thing about that then is that you can do things like, hey, this server is hitting high load, and immediately drop that conversation. If you're running that command that says if the server load hits 95% for a minute, then call this GAM command. It sends the chat to the Google room. And not only does, all your IT admins get notified of that, but now I immediately have a conversation on that topic. Right. So Steve can jump in and say, I'll check it out. I think that server probably needs to be rebooted, or this service is a little wonky right now. And we're immediately collaborating on that topic. I find that pretty cool what you can do with some of the GAM chatbot stuff there.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, before we get off the open source topic, like we mentioned, you've got a day job and there's a lot of other ideas out there. If there was any contributors or wannabe contributors listening, is there somewhere you think that there'd be nice features added, or somewhere you may could use some help, or if folks want to get involved, what could the project use that maybe others?
Yeah, I mean, there's always cleanup work, right? It's an open source project, and sometimes I wish it was closed source to hide, some of the bad coding, right? I mean, right now I've kind of undertaken a job of just breaking it up some. And redividing, the different libraries and APIs, that piece there. So that's something that's always welcome. There was actually another Googler contributing towards that, breaking the code up some there. But then there's always new APIs and functionality coming online that, I definitely always appreciate help as those come online, because it's usually something that a workspace admin is going to, at least some workspace admin is going to want to be able to call. So yeah, getting those in place.
Is there a particular mindset you would encourage GAM users to have? So obviously you've got GAM command lines, which are essentially interacting with workspace APIs. Do you say, go and have a look at the workspace API, see what's possible there, and then come back to GAM, or vice versa? Or is it just throw something in the Google group and see where you get?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of what GAM covers, it's got to be the to 95% of the workspace APIs that are available there, at least in some sense calling the API, right? Now whether or not that meets, the specific need, because, we just know in IT and in computing, it's a different challenge every day, right? The business throws different needs at you. So it's not going to meet all of those, but understanding, okay, can GAM do it today? And if not, what would it look like, for it to be able to do so? Is the API support there? Unfortunately, often that's the answer, is that there's not an API to do that. But sometimes there is, and it just hasn't been built out. So.
Yeah. And I understand you're pretty responsive and reactive to API changes, and you've built functionality in as soon as it becomes available. I remember reading about a use case where you actually built API features that you weren't sure were going to be necessary, but you built it in the tool. I think it was like around delegation or something. And you built it, and they did come, actually, as the old saying goes.
Yeah, that was the email delegation. So taking somebody's mailbox, like an executive's mailbox, and delegating it to their admin assistant so that the admin assistant can respond to emails, that kind of thing. And I tell the story that at the time I was at the university, and that's just not how they operated, right? There weren't execs high enough up that or very many that needed that. So I thought, maybe some IT admins will use it if they need to check on somebody's mailbox or sort their email, but I don't see heavy usage of that. Come to find out, it's one of the more popular ones that, and when there's a deployment, there's just whole lists of delegating out the mailboxes, shared mailboxes, these kind of things there. So one of the things I've always done with GAM is just to not assume, it's a new workspace API, but I don't think that's going to be useful or not. I just, how can I turn it into some commands that admins can run? And then we'll see where it goes. And there are some that got implemented, and probably not super high utilization, right, in terms of those commands and those APIs. But I think having a pretty full breadth there really helps make the tool popular and useful to admins.
If I flip that question around a little, has there been any feature requests you've made of the API teams because you've heard folks want in GAM, or you want to put in GAM? Is there any, kind of use cases you've driven back into the product team to get?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of functionality there. I worked with the Chrome OS team some, and Chromebooks are obviously very popular in education. So there were a number of feature requests there in terms of managing Chromebooks, because that's, when these schools are going one-to-one with Chromebooks, that's a lot of Chromebooks to manage, right, and objects. And you're talking about a physical resource, not a person. So there were a couple of feature requests around that there that I had made to the team, and the team was responsive in getting those in place. So.
Do you see kind of, in the kind of EDU space, there's obviously a lot of administration going on with student accounts, with just through the cycle of particularly in universities and colleges. Is there a big EDU GAM user base out there?
EDU is huge, yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing we've got some EDU admins on here listening. And August is coming, guys. Sorry. Enjoy your vacation now. Put it down for the last few weeks of July. I started in education. I remember just how crazy August and September could be. But yeah, I've always enjoyed working with the education community. I just find that they're generally just really neat admins that are looking to solve these massive problems for schools, and think on a budget, and how can we do this? How can we make it simpler? How can we bring it down to a student level? These kind of things. So yeah, definitely a very popular segment there of GAM admins. So
I have a question I got a question regarding stories. Okay, so you have different levels of expertise with administrators. What if you're more junior level, new type administrator, and you've got this powerful tool, and you go, oh crap, I just deleted everything I didn't want to delete. How do you recover from something like that? Or do you have horror stories that you've heard?
Yeah, I haven't heard too many horror stories with GAM. I think, yes,
Steve, are you
yeah,
speaking
I
to
mean,
experience?
No, I'm just curious.
anybody in the chat here? Yeah, I accidentally deleted all my users. Uh, no, I mean, I try to with GAM. I mean, number one, it should be GAM commands. It should be very obvious what you're doing, right? There's not a lot of computer language, I'll say. It's more like almost more like talking to Google Homes or that kind of thing, right? Telling it what you want to do there. So that's number one is it should be obvious what you're doing. And then the way GAM works with like doing bulk commands, right, is you would take it, okay, formulate the command. I may test it out on my own user or a test user, that kind of thing. And then once I've confirmed, okay, that does what I want, then feed it a CSV or a batch file of, okay, now do it for the 10,000 users, that kind of thing. So I'm sure there are horror stories out there. That's just life in IT, unfortunately. We've all clicked that button and gone, no, wait, hang on. But hopefully not too often with GAM. Some of the, ones I know, okay, that's destroying data. That's things like purging an email completely from the system. They were purging a mail from a mailbox. I'll do something like you have to say do it as an additional part of the command. Like, I really do want to do this and delete all of these. Or the other one is deprovisioning Chromebooks, where if you run this command on the Chromebook, you have to go visit that machine and spend about 10 minutes re-enrolling that Chromebook, right? You think about a school with 100,000 Chromebooks. If they did that, that's going to be thousands of man hours to get those re-enrolled, right? So making sure it's the admin absolutely wants to run this.
We got so Jacob's asking, are there maintenance tools not natively supported? I guess the problem is you've done such a good job with GAM. You've made it open source. You've basically done Google's job for them. So
yeah, I mean, the admin console is very powerful, and there's plenty that the admin console can't do. And the other thing is Google generally releases these APIs to control it. They do have native tools like GCDS that I was mentioning. There's ways to sync Google Classroom, so there are options there. Yeah, GAM, I started around 2009 or so, and it just kind of became the de facto tool that customers use to manage these kind of things.
And being an open source project, forked as well? Are people doing their own GAM takes?
Yeah, I did a search and I saw some GAM lookalikes.
Yeah, so
when I came across.
Yeah, people ask me a lot, and there are forks of GAM. Probably the most popular is Ross Scroggs. I think he calls it GAM Advanced. People kind of wonder, like, is it a competition? Is there some issue in the community? And I always say, not really. If you've been around open source enough, this is what open source does. Like, it's just it's forked. Like it's by design that way, right? Even to the extent of things like Microsoft decided that their browser wasn't good enough, and they forked Google's Chromium code base, right? So, and that's that's how open source is supposed to work. That's how things get better there. So, Ross he contributes a lot upstream also, but he has a version that he maintains that adds functionality he's added there. So I honestly can't speak to it a whole lot. I've not used it a lot myself there, but I know it's also a popular choice there. And I generally just feel like that's great, awesome. Use the tool that works for you, and I'm glad that someone else is taking off building off of what I've done. That it doesn't. Yeah, that's one of the questions a lot of people ask. You've touched someone, is it an official tool, that kind of thing. The old, like, what happens if Jay gets hit by a bus, right? Like,
what does happen?
My boss always says, what happens if you win the lottery, Jay? We're not going to let you get hit by the bus. But it's the answer is it's there, right? The tool is there. It's available for anybody to pick up. There's others maintaining forks of the tool, and it's open and available there. it's not going away if I did, if I hit the lottery.
So well, you hit the lottery, but you gave it away. So that's goodness. So I think GAM, obviously, I mean, like I said, I was blown away by how many things it does, and it's awesome that it makes a lot of the the mundane things easier. What are some other areas you think admins could benefit from developed-based solutions? Now, this obviously is a show primarily for developers. What would you like to see people build, or is there some other voids? Because you did big rollouts as well. Is there something missing that the community, other people should look at that we could improve this for admins or deployments or migrations or something on top of that space?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be done and a lot going on the Chrome side with extensions, with PWAs. That's progressive web apps. The actual it looks and feels like a native app on the OS, but it's basically Chrome on the back end. A huge amount of possibilities of what customers could be doing and growing there that are available to build and scale out. One of the really cool ones, enterprise customers want the biggest thing I say about IT is they want control, right? They want visibility into what's going on in their environment, and they want control over those things. With Chrome, you have ability to do that and deploy that to your endpoints, and yet you don't have to break into the conversation. So the web has become about encryption, about these kind of things. But enterprises that need to break in, that need to manage these things, have to use proxies that kind of interfere with that process and interfere with the web performance because enterprise wants to insert control there. Well, with Chrome and what you can do and manage Chrome today, you're not breaking in there. You're actually at the endpoint and controlling the endpoint. So I think there's a lot of possibilities of what can be done there to manage these employees, but doing it in a way that works for the web, that doesn't slow the web down, right? Because if you've ever worked at a large company that just deploys these, all this security software because they're concerned about security and control, but the user experience is just painful, right? So that's an area where I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve.
So name of the show is Totally Unscripted. The background was a lot of it was AppScript-based development. You can do a lot with AppScript and admin APIs and such. What do you see people do? Do you see people do it? Is it commonplace? Have you done some of that yourself?
Absolutely.
From the admin standpoint?
Yeah, I enjoy writing some AppScript. I haven't used it as much as I have Python on the machine, but it's a perfect language to just pick up and do something quickly. So one of the ones I did a while ago, just personally, my wife is an admin assistant, and her exec was out of the office, every Monday, that kind of thing, and wanted Gmail vacation response on those days automatically. So she would have to go in Sunday evening and turn it on, and then remember to turn it off, or schedule that out, that kind of thing. So super easy with AppScript, and it was one of those I wrote it and I was like, I can't believe it's that simple. That we set up for his account, that it would, Sunday evening turn it on. We can customize the message. You can even do things like, hey, today is this date, and that kind of thing in the response there. So that was just an example of taking AppScript and really simple one there. The other one I really like, and it's one of my coworkers that wrote it, but it's AppScript and it integrates with Chatbot, but I'll try and find the link to it, but it will pick up Google Workspace updates, the blog entry, and it will drop that into a Google chat room. And so we use this internally, even on a lot of chat rooms, to get updates on when a product launched, when the feature launched. And there ends up being, again, that conversation around it. The bot posts it, but then people say oh, that's awesome. We're so excited that's out there. That really solves some needs. So it's a great one to throw in there. And it works with pretty much any XML feed or blog post there that you can have that, just post to your group and start collaborating on that announcement there. So I'll find a link to him and share that.
First of all, that's a great call out. So Justin and I are about to release an article on that on our Google Developer blog.
Awesome.
And you're absolutely right. So we call it Wexbot after our author and creator of it. But it is on the chatbot side, you simply use a webhook, and then AppScript simply runs a trigger, and it patrols a bunch of RSS feeds you set up in the config, and it magically sends them out. And so you mentioned it earlier, you mentioned it again. Chat is becoming just a great way to get the attention of people, both, shouting at them quickly to alert them of something, or passively slip them messages to keep them alert of things happening in the back end. So those are great integration points, and I think they're really worth calling out. So that was a good one. Stay tuned here. We may even do a show on that or something like that, because it's pretty popular.
Yeah, definitely. There's just, chatbots have a huge amount of potential in what you can do with them.
And I think the future is going to grow there too. There's a lot of work going on around those to get them better. Some announcements coming out soon. We just released dialogues as well. So now you can do a dialogue inside of a chatbot and collect information from the user, do something incredible with it on the user's behalf as well too. I do have a question for you. And so you're famous for GAM, and rightfully so. But you don't stop there. You share a lot of other things. You got one of the cool tools I saw you also released up on your profile up on GitHub is Got Your Back. And then you've got cross scripts, and you've got a ton of them. My first question is, when do you find the time? But my other question is, like, how do you come up with all these ideas? Is this some necessities of mother of invention, or how do you discover some of these ideas?
Yeah, time is always an issue. I've got a full-time job and family and that kind of thing. But, it's one of those, an idea will come along, or usually it's a customer need, something that pops up, or I hear from various forums like, this is a pain point, and get an idea there. And try to pull together, and you said there's a lot on my GitHub. A lot of them are just proof of concepts that really never got anywhere, right? But I throw it out there, see what happens with it, that kind of thing. Yeah, GYB, Got Your Back is one I did a while ago. That was just
explain that to a little bit to the folks listening.
Got Your Back is it does backups of Gmail, so it will actually download all your Gmail messages, including the metadata like labels, read status, that kind of thing, and then you can restore it. So
is this a scenario like, I'm going to quit my job and I want to take my mail with me? What's this? What was this?
it's I'm leaving university, and the university used Gmail. I want to pull that out, or I need to switch. I've known a number of guys that are like, I created a Gmail account 10 years ago, and it's not exactly professional sounding what I named it, right? I need to come up with a little more professional account name. So moving that kind of thing, but and some people are just backing it up, right? Like good practice is making sure you have a backup somewhere. So the tool downloads it and pulls it out there. I know it's common for things like, hey, I've been working on a project and I have all of my project emails under a label. GYB can do Gmail queries and back up just messages that match that. So I could back up all my messages that are related to the project, and Charles, then you'd be able to import them and take over and have some history on the project available to you. So those kind of things. But that was another one, again, that just came along. It was actually back before I started at Google, I was one of the top contributors for some of the Google forums, and the Gmail forum that came up often, like, how do I back up Gmail? There were ways to do it, but they didn't totally integrate with Gmail's unique label style, right? They did it more like folders, and just problems with that. So it came out of that piece there. But yeah, I mean, there's various ones. Sometimes it's just solving a problem I have, right? Like, I've got a couple of them up now that are things like tracking Chrome releases. What version of Chrome are we on? And what version of Chrome should your Chromebook be running right now? That I've done just out of kind of surfacing that, the information's out there. It's just hard to surface. So providing that data often.
Hey, Martin, I just located that example that Jay brought up about the Wexbot.
Wexbot, yeah.
So it's if you. Oh wait, that's the. Wait, let me go back when I gave you a two-row link. Let me get you the right link there, and you can share that with the folks on the window and in the chat. That would be super awesome. So
yeah, again, it's a great solution if you've got maybe your IT team And maybe it's the Google Workspace updates blog. I really like getting those updates just to know, because it's become such a huge project that it's impossible to keep up completely with what's coming, right? And often those will pop up and I'm surprised, like, oh, I didn't no idea we were launching that, that feature's coming. So great way to stay on top of it as a team.
You're absolutely right. I asked you earlier about your use of chat with GAM. And the one point, and I don't think we flashed this resources either, Martin, is you've actually, since now we have obviously, consumer version of chat available for folks, and more people are using chat, you've actually opened up a GAM public chat room. That's neat. And it's also very interesting because now anybody can chat with anybody, not just to contribute and learn, but it's a great way of pulling folks together. You don't have to be in the same domain, or you don't have to apply to be in anything super hard. You use Google Groups underneath it. But how's that going? I mean, is it active? Are people more gravitating towards that than, say, the Google Groups? Like, what's the uptick?
Yeah, it was one thing that I was finding. We've just, in business, you have that, okay, this can be an email. It just helped to see if I can get an instant answer to it. Yep. And so that's where I thought, how can I do this? And I tried a couple of options with GitHub, with different more chat communities. And the problem with all of them was it would then require every single admin to create some other account. We all have too many accounts and too many systems anyways, right? So I just, it's not the normal for Google Chat to have like public chat rooms, but I thought, let's see where it goes, how it happens. So set that up, and it's been a good way for people to reach out. I use it myself a lot when I want to get like instant feedback, right? Some of the more active GAM admins out there are on there. Some of them, I see them in the chat room here also, Brian Kim and those guys. Yes. Is that the room right there? Yeah. So it's about 100 people. About 100 people that are in there now. So not nearly as big as the Google group is about 5,000 people. It probably has 15 to 20 posts a day in there. But I think we all have our kind of mappings of when do I go to email, when do I go to chat. But offering people more ways to connect is always good for a community. So.
No, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right that people want a little more instantaneous. I mean, it's the same, like in Google, sending an email, you have to wait. Sending a chat, you expect a more immediate answer. And it's the future. Actually, it's the present. Who am I kidding?
I think it's a great way as well for, someone says, has anyone got this? And someone will come back, actually, I have got it. I saw it the other day. So Kil Nilsson, who's actually promoted the show in your chat space, Jay. Sorry about that. But he shared, I think I got the link here, just a Gmail signature changing recipe, and which came out of someone saying, has anyone got anything that does this? And kind of
yeah, and I think that's pulling from the user's like rich profile information, right? Which is really cool that you're automatically setting up that company logo and style, but getting the right title in there, department, that kind of thing. So
I'm showing our live capabilities on air as I'm messing my camera up in the background. So a little bit funny. And I can see the behind the screen stuff. So apologize for my operating difficulties here. Nope. Question for you. Question for you, Jay. Obviously you said a lot of developers, use GAM and look to GAM. Again, kind of with my development hat back on. What inspiration do you give admins to become more comfortable with developing or actually building some of their own solutions like you did? Like, what's the
Yeah, I mean, I think it started for me as just, I always refer to it as glue work in IT, right? Like I've got data over in this system, maybe it's the HR system, maybe it's Active Directory, whatever, and I got to get it over to this system. If you're doing that manually, if you're pulling that data, when I started at the university, they were putting that in all manually. And what that meant is it was a student worker creating accounts and setting the password. and then communicating that password to the user, and it just error prone, and a huge amount of man hours just wasted, right? So find ways, learn a simple scripting language, like, whatever OS is your choice, Bash or PowerShell on Windows, something like that, and just start building some very simple ones that just automate one part of it, right? You don't have to completely automate the job, but if it saves you a couple of clicks there, then over time it's going to save you that. So figuring that kind of stuff out, and then building from there. There's a ton of examples on the web. I mean, like. Stack Overflow contributes a lot to GAM. It just, there's just, okay, how do I take this huge array and convert it and do whatever with it, and a couple of Google searches, and there's usually an answer on Stack Overflow to figure that kind of thing out there. So there's a community out there ready to help with whatever problem you're trying to solve. It just takes some practice, it takes finding the right projects that you can experiment on, some too that are open to that. But
one of the nice things I like about GAM is that it can use CSV files as a data source, and that's I think most of us can work our way around a CSV file. I guess, do you see in terms of generating those CSV files, you see a lot kind of Google Sheets, Foo kind of formula work, extracting data from other data sets and combining and generating those?
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing, like, actually deploying customers and that kind of thing at a reseller, like, that was a huge amount of the job, right? And the lists were always changing, which users it applies to, which are going in this wave, and so you would have these spreadsheets and just grinding through the spreadsheet, get the data, right? And then when you're ready, you pull that data out and you run the commands and you're good to go there. But having that, spreadsheet that especially a Google Sheet, when you can collaborate on that, and it's not just me in there, but the whole team looking at it, pulling that data, and then you execute on it. So really powerful there. And it's fun too. I really enjoy in those, getting to kind of demo the Google Workspace tools to the customer team as they're going, right, and learning how they can make use of those. There, the project usually starts with me getting some Excel sheets in my email, attachments. All right, I'll take that and convert it, and hey, look, we can see it at the same time. So
step one.
It's one of the most fun things to do. I'll tell you a story. I've got a fifth grade daughter, and she started at in the school, and it was the first year they did Chromebooks for the students, and so they did a parent intro. There was like a parent's guide to a Google Workspace. So I told my wife, I'm going. I'm going to go learn it. So, but it was the instructor did a great job, and we've been very happy with the district, the way they've done it, in terms of, you put everybody at a table, the parents, and set it up where they got into a Google Doc, and you could just see the wow on parents' faces of collaborating on a doc, and we're all typing at the same time. That's crazy. How's this working? So it's stuff like that we take for granted because we do it so much, but it's those wow moments for users. So
no, it's super cool, and not to detract from the conversation, but I've been using the tables, everyone 20's tables.
Yeah.
For managing data, which, if you don't know, if you tune in, it's a project that we trialed publicly, and now we're looking to figure out how do we build it into our offering, and it's such a neat tool that's kind of a cross between a database and a sheet at the same time, and super neat stuff and super great for managing stuff. So I mean, I just love me spreadsheets. That's all it is. So
tables is another one of those that just you use it on a project and it just basically sells itself, right? This is invaluable to us. So I'm excited to see where that one goes also.
No, absolutely. So it'd be maybe a good question to wrap on, or we're close to time. What's next for you? What's next for GAM? Project the future. Where do you see things going? The union, so to speak.
Yeah, that's tough in terms of what's coming. A lot of it just depends on where the needs are. One of the areas I've kind of been experimenting with, and I think I shared this little while ago, and there's nothing out yet. But I'd love to make GAM a little more event-driven, right? Like now it's you run a command or you have a cron job that kicks it off, schedule a task on Windows. But being able to do more like, looking at the Google Workspace logs, and when this event happens, it fires off a GAM command, make it a little more almost like a IFTT or, scheduled task kind of a thing. So looking into ways that can kind of operate it means some big changes to the GAM model. It would be running more as a service than just a type and run it thing there. But hopefully something will happen there soon to get some time to pull together what I have. So
I was thinking about one of the use cases there. It could be like when you get an unexpected meeting on your calendar from your manager saying, "Come to my office," it could automatically trigger the offboarding.
Definitely.
I'm sure there'll be better use cases than that. That would be one.
Yeah.
No, so anyways, first of all, I mean, just on behalf of the community and everybody, thank you for your contributions over the years and your continued stuff going forward. On behalf of the show, thanks for coming on and sharing those things with us. It was super great to have you. Martin and Steve?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jay. So as part of the show description, we'll put in all the wonderful resources that we've been talking about, so people can get those. And please share the recording as well. And also thanks for everyone who's tuned in live and contributed in the chat. I think, Jay, you've done a wonderful job bringing your fan club with you. So hopefully some of those will stick around for future shows.
Yeah, it was a very fun discussion, just kind of chatting with you guys and getting your input there. So thanks for having me on.
So until next time, folks, I think this is us. Happy gamming.